All right, so today I wanted to talk about this Forbes article. BlackRock CEO issues massive warning after crypto flip that powered a Bitcoin, Ethereum, and XRP price boom. Um, you know, the goal of this video is to just give you an overview. For those of you that maybe have dabbled in the crypto market, just heard of it, not really for experienced crypto traders at all, but I wanted to explain sort of Bitcoin and crypto and why they're a thing, why they pump every 4 years, and why it's a surefire time to get in and at least triple, quadruple your money in the big ones, and potentially 10, 100x your money if you pick the right smaller ones. So we're going to go through this article and talk a little bit about it, and then I do have some charts pulled up as well, and we can talk about that. But we're not going to go into like what is Bitcoin, what is Ethereum. You guys better know that already. Go find another video if you want to learn about that. We're really talking about why. Why is this stuff important? Why is this stuff pumping sometimes? Why is it not pumping other times? And why is now, and I don't mean, I mean, in the higher time frame, broader sense. I don't mean you buy now and you're not going to ever take any kind of heat on your position, have any kind of drawdown. I just mean if you buy now and you hold for 12 months, for your long-term cap gains, you are going to be experiencing a 3x plus return. And so no matter, even at a 20%, 30% interest rate on a credit card, right now it is probably, and this is not financial advice, this is just my personal opinion and how I run things, you're going to outpace a 20, 30% inflation, 20, 30% APR on a credit card. And, obviously if you had like a 7% home equity loan, like you're going to outpace that. So really not a good time to be putting money in things. It's a good time to be putting money in crypto, potentially gold and silver, and expecting to triple your money over the next 12 months. But again, not financial advice. Do not sue me if you do that and lose money. I'll be losing money with you, so you'll have nothing to sue. Okay, but just let's get into it here. So there's an update below. So U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has warned countries around the world are moving away from the U.S. dollar as the spiraling $34 trillion U.S. debt pile fuels fears of collapse, with Bitcoin and crypto slowly chipping away at dollar dominance. Now, this was infinitely predictable. If you had any sense of game theory, you knew what Bitcoin was. No matter when you learned about Bitcoin, it obviously came online in January 2009. But whether it was 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, 2018, 2021, 2024, this was always the big deal about Bitcoin. The world reserve currency. And that is currently the US dollar, but game theory says that it won't be the US dollar forever because the US is not a good steward of this privilege, and they never have been. And even if they were, it still wouldn't be good enough to beat Bitcoin. So let's talk about it. The Fed has a target interest rate of 2% per year. Now, that seems decent. Obviously, over the last several years, it has not been 2%. And what's funny is just a week ago, when the numbers came out that the CPI was only 3%, which was below expectation, we saw the market start to panic. Why? Because they were expecting the inflation to be 3.1%. So with the number coming in 0.1% below expectation, that said, people can't afford shit, and we are headed toward a potential recession. And obviously there's a lot of other indications of that as well. You've got unemployment going up. You've got unaffordability of housing. You've got stores like Walgreens talking about closing many, many locations. Obviously, jobs are gonna go with that. And then you've got all these fast food places that are having to let go of people because of minimum wage laws and stuff like that as well. But ultimately, isn't that crazy? You have a Fed target rate of 2% per year, and the 3% number all of a sudden panics people and says, hey, we need to start cutting interest rates. Let me ask you something. If you have inflation at 3% and you're going to cut the interest rates, are you expecting inflation to go up or down? Obviously, cutting the interest rates increases the money supply. The inflation goes up. That's what we saw during COVID. And you had people saying, oh, it's the supply chain. No, they printed like 20, 30% of the money supply and added it to the world. That is why we're seeing inflation right now. And yes, there were obviously specific price shocks in specific areas. We're not here to comment on that. What we're talking about is the traditional definition of inflation, which is printing money. When you print a new dollar, it increases the supply of dollars. It doesn't increase the supply. It doesn't increase the value of the totality of the dollars. So you're increasing the denominator and not increasing the numerator. So each dollar becomes worth less. That is what causes inflation. So when we talk about the US dollar as the reserve currency of the world, what you need to understand is the US, when they inflate their currency, they're stealing from every single person that holds a dollar, and the whole world has to hold dollars because they have to buy goods and services in dollars. So it has always been very easily predictable that regardless of what the US does as a steward of the dollar, so long as they maintain this target inflation of 2%, which is kind of their mandate, and even if they didn't, probably if you have deflationary money that has a negative inflation rate, then obviously that is going to win out over time as well. But just to keep this in perspective here, let's talk about beyond the 2%, because if it was just that, it would still be a game theory optimality that the world reserve currency becomes Bitcoin. But in lieu of, let's talk about all the things that the U.S. does and has been doing to accelerate that trend. So number one, the inflation rate of 2% is not real. They have the CPI number, but the CPI number is complete trash. They've changed it, the definition, many, many times over the last several decades since they started, and it's always lower than the real inflation number. And so, part of the reason we don't feel that necessarily in America is because a big chunk of the dollars that get printed get absorbed by foreign countries. So you can imagine, with the vast majority of dollars being held outside of the U.S., that were people to stop needing dollars, the demand for the US dollar to go down, that money comes back into the US. Imagine the amount of massive inflation that we would experience because it's been artificially low. But that's not really the main thing. The main thing is the punitive nature, the bullying that the US does around the world with the dollar. And most recently, this has been exhibited by the US stealing billions of dollars from Russia in order to fund the Ukrainian conflict. And we're not here to be political. We're no fans of Russia. We're no fans of totalitarianism in any form. But what we care about our financial security. And when you use the dollar as a weapon, you are incenting people to stop using the dollar as for commerce and stop holding dollars, stop investing in dollars. You're disincenting people from using the dollar. So that is number one. And when we talk about game theory, let's talk about game theory for a second. Everyone would love to have the privilege of having the world reserve currency. Russia would love to have the world reserve currency. China would love to have the world reserve currency. The UK used to have the world reserve currency. They would love to have it back. Anyone, their personal optimal situation would be if they have the world reserve currency. But let's be real here. How many people actually can have the world reserve currency? Only one. Or, in the case of Bitcoin, and this is why it's game theory optimal, 0. So, if you're Russia, if you're China, if you're America, if you're England, if you're any country, would you rather the world reserve currency be in control of your enemies, or the world reserve currency be in control of nobody? And ultimately, that right there is the game theory principle that guarantees that over a long enough time horizon, you will see Bitcoin become the world reserve currency. So when Yellen warns that countries are moving away from the dollar, this was very easily predictable. And it's not because of anything other than the inflation and the punitive weaponry that the U.S. uses the dollar for. So they can come up with any other excuse that they want to, but at the end of the day, this was always a certainty, a game theory certainty. It is a Nash equilibrium position where all countries agree ultimately to live on a Bitcoin standard. So, Bitcoin price has rocketed over the last year, climbing despite a critical Federal Reserve warning. No one cares what you think, Federal Reserve. Do you have any incentive to warn that Bitcoin is a good hold right now? I mean, let's be real. They're the ones that have the privilege of printing the money, and they collect interest from the U.S. government on that money. They loan the money out to the U.S. government to spend into the economy. I mean, insane. That is a thing. But at the end of the day, this is why Bitcoin is a guarantee. And yeah, if you bought the top, you had to draw down 85%. I'm so sorry to hear it, but you're back in profit now, or very close to it, and you will be in a couple weeks. Because every 4 years, the issuance of Bitcoin halves. And that is what drives the Bitcoin price. And insofar as Bitcoin goes up, ultimately the alts follow. So we'll come back to this. I just want to pull up this chart. This is the Bitstamp chart on Bitcoin and Ethereum. And Bitcoin is on the bottom here. Obviously, the time horizon on Bitcoin is longer because Ethereum, actually, it started trading here in August 2015 on Bitstamp, but it came out in 2014. But Bitcoin obviously came out in 2009, started trading on Bitstamp in 2011. And what we can see here, let's talk about when the halvings were. So the first halving of Bitcoin happened toward the end of 2012. So that was when the first halving occurred. And what we saw after that halving was boom, boom, mega run. So in 2012, I think the halving was somewhere around here. Maybe it was around here. In any case, let's just take an average price here. Say like a $10 price. $11 price. And we shot up, right? What's this high? 165. What's this high? 1163. So halving happens, and within 12 months, or say 13 months, we've gone up 100x. Okay? Now, granted, the magnitude at which we go up after halvings does decrease, because first of all, the halvings have every time, so they become less impactful, but also as the numbers get bigger, there's less new adoption as a percentage, and the pumps are smaller. This is why you can always make more money in shitcoins potentially, but it's risky because you could also lose it all very easily. So this was when the first halving was. It was back in 2012. somewhere in this area here. September, October, November, December, sometime, probably closer toward the end of the year, because obviously started January 2009. And so January 2013 would be 4 years, but Bitcoin gets mined faster than every 4 years. It catches up, and so it happens somewhere in here. You have this bull run, and then after the bull run, profits get taken in December 2013, and you got the bear market. And when does the bear market resolve? Well, let's go back 4 years. Add 4 years to your 2013. Subtract a couple weeks, months. This was your next halving in 2016. And what happens after the halving? Zoom, zoom. We zoom, zoom. It's built into the currency, my friends. You think it's volatile? It is volatile. You know when it's really volatile? It's really volatile to the upside after the halving. All right, so 4 years later, right? 2020. Last halving was 2016. Next halving, 2020. So here's 2020, and zoom, zoom. And we go from a low in the 3000s. Here's your low here. 3,850 in 2020. This, of course, was on a death wick. Very hard to catch that price, but zoom, zoom up into the 60s. All right. So now 2021, you have your 60s, and we got to add 4 years, right? 2016 plus 4 years. Oh, 2024, that is the year we are in right now. And so we've had our halving. And what happens after halving? Zoom, zoom. Okay? So that's why we're going to 200 plus K next year on Bitcoin. And that's why even if you buy now at like 68K or whatever it is, you are going to make money because it's going to triple, quadruple, maybe 5x from here. The Bitcoin price has rocketed over the last year, climbing despite a critical federal warning and helped by bettors who are increasingly confident former U.S. President Donald Trump will retake the White House in November. As if that matters, because it doesn't matter. Because first of all, banning Bitcoin is bullish for Bitcoin, even though short-term might be bearish. People sell off, but Bitcoin is anti-regulation. Bitcoin is something you can self-custody. So if they tell us we can't use it, it just drives more people into it. So it doesn't really matter, but obviously Trump being pro-Bitcoin is good for Trump, and it's good for Bitcoin holders over the long term, because ultimately what is going to happen, it's a guaranteed, game theory certainty, is that as the world reserve currency, all the countries in the world, all the companies in the world, everybody's going to have to hold Bitcoin in reserve because they need to use it in order to trade with other countries. So let's talk about that for a second, because Bitcoin has a supply cap of 21 million. And when you think about 21 million as a supply cap, it's not a very big number. It's really not. There are, 37 million millionaires in America? How many millionaires in the US? 21 million millionaires in America? 24 million. Okay, 24.5 million millionaires in America. How about in the world? 59 million millionaires in the world. So just in America, if every single millionaire wanted to have one Bitcoin, shit out of luck. There's 24.5 million millionaires. There will only be 21 million Bitcoin. There are not 21 million Bitcoin right now. There's less than 20 million Bitcoin. How many Bitcoin? $19,768. So less than 20 million Bitcoin and 24.5 million millionaires in America, just in America, 59 millionaires globally, okay? So let's say everyone wants to have one Bitcoin. Well, sorry, but you can't. They aren't enough to go around. It's just an absolute fact that there aren't enough to go around. So I think, a couple $1 million for one Bitcoin is a very, very conservative price target over the long term, because at the end of the day, everyone who's a millionaire has at least $1 million, and there aren't enough Bitcoin for each millionaire to have one. Now, of course, most people are going to want more than one Bitcoin. And the big holders, they all have more than one Bitcoin. People have thousands of Bitcoin. Michael Saylor has 1 million plus Bitcoin, I believe. No, does he? No, maybe 100,000 plus Bitcoin. How many? Yeah, 100,000 plus Bitcoin does MicroStrategy hold? 226,000 Bitcoins in MicroStrategy, man. So that's 226,000 locked up. What about the 4 million that are lost? So now so you got 21 million, you take 4 million off of that, now it's only 17 million. This guy's got 226,331. A lot of other people have tens, hundreds of Bitcoin, thousands of Bitcoin. The millionaires, they're not getting one. You're just not getting one, buddy. I'm so sorry to hear it. Now, as the radical Project 2025 policy plan puts Bitcoin on a collision course with gold, I don't really know what that is. I've heard things, about the Project 2025 plan. I don't really know. I don't really care. But obviously, this is the use of the word radical is inflammatory and anti-journalism. But that's Forbes. We know which side they are on. Yellen has said she fears U.S. financial sanctions will reduce the role of the dollar around the world as Russia encourages the use of Bitcoin and crypto. Oh, scary Russia! Oh no! Russia's gonna use the Bitcoins! Well, guess what? Russia's been using the dollars. Drug dealers been using the dollars. Does it really matter what they use? It's a medium of exchange. They don't like not being able to freeze accounts and give them money to their enemies. But, maybe you shouldn't have done it in the first place because you accelerated the move. We have very powerful sanctions that are available because of the important role of the dollar in international transactions. See, listen to this lady. Are you serious? We have very powerful sanctions. We use the dollar as a weapon and we brag about it. Our sanctions are so powerful. Insane. The more we have used sanctions, the more countries look for ways to engage in financial transactions that don't involve the dollar. Duh. Obviously. You use it as a weapon, they're gonna move away from it. Even without using it as a weapon, you're still inflating 2%. You're stealing. Inflation is theft. Never forget it. All right. Update 7/16. BlackRock Chief Executive Larry Fink, whose crypto conversion last year was the spear tip in the successful campaign to bring Bitcoin spot exchange traded funds to Wall Street, has warned over the pace that the U.S. debt pile is growing. And by the way, Ethereum ETF's coming? Interesting. On the 23rd of July, Ethereum ETFs will be trading as well. Recent news there. So I think we're going to see it. I think we're going to see Ethereum pump. Yeah, it is alt season coming up. We'll talk about that. We're putting a real burden on our children of this massive spend that we can't afford, Fink told CNBC, calling for the U.S. and countries around the world to go for economic growth. The U.S. deficit is the largest in the world, growing at the fastest rate in the world, and we need to be finding ways of minimizing the role of the deficit on the economy. The public deficits are just growing too fast as a percentage of GDP. Yeah, I mean, obviously this is true. You've got your MMTers saying that deficits don't matter, that debts don't matter, because you can just print your way out as long as you're the world reserve currency. But as we talked about, maintaining that status, that involves trust from everyone else. It involves everyone else using your currency. And as you abuse the privilege, you lose the status. You lose the trust. I think that at the end of the day, we will see the move away, but the question is how soon do we actually move to the Bitcoin standard? Because over a long enough time scale, it is an absolute inevitability because it is the game theory equilibrium point. Earlier this year, Bank of America analysts warned the U.S. debt load is about to ramp up to add $1 trillion every 100 days, fueling the Bitcoin price surge. It's just absolutely insane. This was very, very easy to see happening from miles and miles away. And if you didn't see it, or if you saw it but you didn't trade it, well, buy 70K Bitcoin, buddy. That's all I can say for you. The U.S. national debt is rising by $1 trillion every 100 days. Michael Hartnett, chief strategist of Bank of America, wrote in a note to clients, adding, "It's little wonder debt debasement trades are closing in on all-time highs." Last month, analysts at BlackRock, the world's largest asset manager, warned an unprecedented scenario is unfolding that could hit the Bitcoin price and crypto market as the Federal Reserve and central banks are forced to keep interest rates higher than pre-pandemic to tackle persistent inflationary pressures. Now, obviously, we've seen over the last week a turn in that sentiment, them saying, well, inflation was 0.1% below the predicted level, so I guess we've tamed it. Let's start cutting rates again. Not that they have, but the prediction markets are suggesting that there will be 2 rate cuts this year and almost 100% chance of at least 1 by September. I guess we will see. Fink also admitted he was wrong about Bitcoin and called it a legitimate financial instrument after branding Bitcoin an index of money laundering in 2017. Okay, buddy, an index of money laundering. You think that money laundering went up? Let's go back to the chart. So he said that in 2017. So let's talk about 2017. December 2017, just 2016, right? We have a high of 1,005, a low of 888. The Vinny bottom. Never forget, Vinny. Never forget, buddy. So let's just take the low of the year in January 2017. 751. All right. So you have a low of 751. And you have a high 19,666. So let me ask you, Mr. Fink, if Bitcoin is an index of money laundering, did money laundering go up 30x? Let's actually just run the calculation. It's not 30. It's a little bit less, right? We don't want to exaggerate things, all right? 19,666, and what was the low? 751 divided by 751. Did money laundering go up 26x, Larry Fink, in the year 2017? Did it go up 26x? Is it an index for... Did money laundering go up 26x in 2017? So at the beginning of 2017, it was 1/26th the amount that it was at the end of 2017. Is that what happened, Mr. Fink? Sure, buddy. Okay. Well, at least he admitted he was wrong. It is a legitimate financial instrument that allows you to maybe have uncorrelated type of returns. Now, I don't know about that. Uncorrelated, because when we're in a risk-on environment, it's correlated with other risk-on assets. But at the end of the day, it has its own 4-year cycle, as we've been talking about. So in that sense, it is uncorrelated. Not trying to do any math on that. Maybe it's uncorrelated. Maybe it's correlated sometimes. Certainly with gold, it's correlated right now. But put your glasses on. It's the future. You gotta have some. I believe it is an instrument that you invest in when you're more frightened, though. It's an instrument when you believe countries are debasing their currency via excess deficits, and some countries are. Okay, so let's talk about that, because he said, when you're more frightened, is it an instrument that you invest in when you're more frightened? And is debasing the currency by excess deficits something that causes fear in investors? Let's talk about that, because I recall a little thing called COVID. And yes, people were afraid, but the fear, there was a death wave. Let's go back to the chart. Okay, COVID 2020, March 2020. COVID lockdowns happened. Oh, nuking the price of Bitcoin. Oh no. Fear. We're afraid. Let's sell all coin. That doesn't exactly track now, does it, Mr. Fink? Okay. But what happened after the nuke? What happened in Bitcoin? What happened in equities? The V bottom. The V bottom happened. The V bottom happened, and new highs. Were people afraid? Were they afraid of the debasement, or were they risk on, bullish, greedy? Because Bitcoin pumped quite a bit during that greed, during that risk on, during that debasement, during that money printing, bzzz, making it rain. Yeah, that's what happened. Obviously, we all know people were risk on. They were not afraid. Maybe they were afraid of COVID, although the people that were afraid of COVID were not the ones buying Bitcoin. Let's be very clear about that. People were not afraid during this period. They weren't buying it because of fear. They were buying it because of greed. It was the fastest rabbit. It was the fastest horse in the race. Excuse me. The rabbit is what goes out in front of the dog race to get the dogs to chase and start running, right? Okay. BlackRock's embrace of Bitcoin is widely credited with powering the Bitcoin price and crypto market rebound over the last year. Come on, guys. How stupid do you have to be? Did BlackRock's embracing of the crypto market pump the price, or did the halving pump the price? Was it predictable 12 years ago that in 2024 into 2025 we would be pumping? I think we all know the answer to that. This is how normies think. We need a catalyst. Prices go up because of ETFs, not because people buy. So, BlackRock's embrace of Bitcoin is widely credited with the powering of the Bitcoin price and crypto market rebound over the last year, with a fleet of spot Bitcoin ETFs exploding onto Wall Street in January and led by BlackRock's IBIT Bitcoin Fund. The U.S. has targeted Russia and Iran with strict financial sanctions in recent years, leading to accusations it's weaponizing the dollar and pushing so-called BRICS group of up-and-coming countries away from the Western financial system. Accusations? Is it an accusation that they're weaponizing the dollar, or is it an absolute fact that they're weaponizing the dollar? Because when you steal money from your enemy to give to your enemy's enemy and your ally, I would call that weaponization. I think that is well within the parameters of the definition of weaponize the dollar. So they were happy to use, let's go back here. When they talked about 2025, yeah, the radical 2020 Project 2025 policy. So it's radical, and it's a fact that it's radical. But is it a fact that the U.S. is weaponizing the dollar, or is it just an accusation? The BRICS, initially made up of Brazil, Russia, India, and China, before being joined by South Africa, and then Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates, are major developing countries that have formed an alliance to grow their power and influence on the world stage. The US-led Western financial sanctions will have a certain impact on the international status of the US dollar. Zhao Qinming, a Beijing-based financial expert, told the China newspaper Global Times. In the short term, the position of the US dollar should remain stable, but over time, its position may weaken. Okay, so this is, again, very, very obvious, Mr. Zhao Qingming. I mean, come on, buddy. Come on, buddy. The US-led Western sanctions were always going to do this, make this go faster. And over the long term, even without the US-led sanctions, just the inflation in and of itself, and even without the inflation, if the inflation was 0%, the fact that China doesn't have the control to inflate it themselves is always going to make them want to move towards something that they can inflate. So BRICS, Russia, China, what is it? Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. Is that the S? BRICS. Was always going to, they always wanted to print their own money. They were always going to want to print their own money. They're teaming up so that they could kind of have some power against the US, but ultimately it's China and Russia. And really China, because China has almost 2 billion people and Russia has a very small fraction of that. So it's at the end of the day, it's China. China wants to control the money. They want to inflate the currency. So just that fact alone says that in the long term, the position may weaken. May weaken, will weaken, guaranteed to weaken. But of course, this stuff does accelerate it. There's no doubt that weaponizing the dollar is going to accelerate it. And going back to what we were talking about before, I mean, yes, if China takes over the world, then they'll just create their own digital currency, and they'll be able to inflate it whenever they want. They'll have the hegemony and the privilege of that hegemony, and Bitcoin doesn't win yet. But over the long time scale, empires collapse, and Bitcoin will be the world reserve currency. It's the guaranteed equilibrium point. Earlier this month, Russia's central bank encouraged the use of Bitcoin and crypto to counter Western sanctions imposed over the Ukraine conflict. All right, we got a chart here. Bitcoin price has swung wildly in recent years. I think we've already discussed why. It's not because of anything other than just a natural cycle, the breathing in and breathing out of the Bitcoin market. New financial technology creates opportunities for schemes which did not exist before. This is why we softened our stance on the use of cryptocurrencies in international payments, allowing the use of digital assets in such payments. Elvira Nabiulina, a governor of Russia's central bank, reportedly told a financial conference in St. Petersburg. Fresh fears of US dollar collapse come as some Bitcoin and crypto traders bet the price of Bitcoin will soar to an all-time high ahead of the US election in November. Well, it would be very nice if it does, but even if it doesn't, next year, boom, 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 zoom, 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 we're going. And we have made a new all-time high this year, which is different from any other cycle. Well, not any other cycle. The last cycle, so we've had 2 cycles since the 2013 cycle, which is the last cycle where we made an all-time high before we made the all-time high. So let's go back to 2013 cycle. So again, 2012, we have the first Bitcoin halving, end 2012, right? And then we go zoom, zoom, and then we go double bubble. And that was the first time that we ever did this. That was the last time that we did this, where we made the new all-time high before the odd year, before the year after. So when we're talking about halving 2012, moon 2013, halving 2016, moon 2017, halving 2020, moon 2021, halving 2024, new all-time high in 2024. and not like in 2021. In 2020, we actually did make an all-time high. So let's be true about that. So in 2021 or in 2020, this is January 2020. Here, this last week of the year, the high was 34. The week before, December 21st, 2020, we made a high. The week before that, December 7th, the high was 19,431. So the high of this week. Okay, so the week before that, November 30th, high was 19,918. So that was close to making a new high in the end of November, but we didn't make a new high. 19,918. So all right, so we got the weekend November 30th, starting Monday, November 30th through, I guess, the first couple of days of December. 9,918, not a new all-time high, and we had not made an all-time high. The high, again, 19,966. So the following week, the week of December 14th, Monday, December 14th, or excuse me, the following week, we actually made a high 19,431, even though it closed red. 19,431. So we still didn't make a new all-time high, but we did go higher than the previous week. But again, not 19,966. 19,666. And then the week after that, December 14th week, that's when we finally broke the high. So the very, very end of 2020, we did make an all-time high. But again, looking at this, where we are now in July, and we actually made the first all-time, the new all-time high. I need to move it. All right, let's just take a look here. So we have a high here of 73,794. High here of 70,184. High here of 64. Okay, so this week, the week of March 11th, that is when we made the first the new all-time high. That is pretty early in the year. I mean, relative to your all-time high in December, end of November, March is pretty early, right? Now, one thing though is we're not taking into account the money supply, because right now we're Bitcoin divided by US dollars in nominal terms, but if you divide it by M2, we actually have not made an all-time high yet. So keep that in mind. But this is just to say that we are ahead of schedule in terms of our pump, and we could very well go to 100K before the election. But even if we don't, we're still going to 100K by the end of the year. We're still going to the 100K next year, probably going to 200K next year. All right. In a July 2nd note seen by The Block, Standard Charter's head of Forex and crypto research, Jeffrey with a G, my boy Jeffrey, predicted a fresh all-time high for Bitcoin in August is likely. Yeah, I think we may get it before August because it is July 20th and we are pretty damn close. 67,183, the all-time high, again, I believe was 74 something. Oh, is it 71,958? No, it was higher than that. 73. It was 73 something. Then 100,000 by the U.S. election day. And the logic here is that both regulation and mining would be looked at more favorably under Trump. It doesn't matter, buddy. It doesn't matter, okay? It doesn't matter what your name is. Even if it's Jeffrey. It doesn't matter. Kendrick said he expects to see the Bitcoin price reach 150,000 by the end of 2024, hit 200,000 before the end of 2025. That would be great. That would be great. I think that's realistic. I think it's definitely realistic. 2025 is going to be the moon year. And I think that so one thing that we need to be aware of is, we talk about this double bubble, right? We have the bubble, the double bubble. We haven't had a double bubble since 2013. And in fact, we had the opposite of a double bubble in 2021. We had a half bubble in 2021 because we went up and then we kind of got ready to go up again. We made a slightly higher high and then we nuked. And it also happened early. We messed some people up. We really screwed some people up on that one because people were ready for the moon. They were ready for it to be like this bad boy. You made a run and then you consolidate and run and zoom, right? But instead you went run and then half run and then whoops-a-daisy and nuke. So I think with that pent-up aggression and not doing the thing as much in 2021, it might get exaggerated this time around, especially now that we have the on-ramps for people with the ETFs to be able to send money in, and just the fact that the climate globally is like what we're seeing here with the U.S. dollar losing its reserve status. And also, we didn't even mention, of course, Saudi is no longer under the petrodollar agreement. So that's also going to be a catalyst globally. And at the end of the day, we're just moving toward an accelerated rate at which Bitcoin adoption globally hits that global reserve scale. Trump has emerged as preferred candidate for the Bitcoin and crypto community, promising to protect the people's right to hold Bitcoin and being announced as a headline speaker at the Bitcoin 2024 conference later this month, putting him starkly at odds with the Biden administration's anti-crypto stance. Yeah, I don't know what they're doing. Like, why would the Biden administration be anti-crypto? They lost Silicon Valley by being anti-crypto. So, interesting article. I think we can kind of, basically leave it there. Hopefully you guys learned something. And just a couple more points before we sign off. So, the way that the Bitcoin market works is Bitcoin leads the charge, but then the money rotates through the alts, right? So what we can expect is Bitcoin's already led the charge, kind of moving up here. And I think over this next leg, it's going to lead the charge again. But we will see when the Bitcoin bull run is in full effect, just like with gold, when a gold bull run is in full effect. Let's zoom out. The alts will run faster than Bitcoin. Bitcoin dominance will go down. So Bitcoin goes up, alts go up faster because it takes less money to move them around. There's less liquidity. Someone with big pot of money cycling their money through Ethereum to pump it, it's going to go a lot farther. So I think we can expect that. I am calling the moon on Ethereum. I think we'll see 20,000. Definitely 10,000. That's happening. Like 10,000. I think 10,000 on ETH by the end of the year, most likely. But I think we're going to see 20,000 in 2025. And also XRP, man. This is a shit coin. I hate this coin so much. I can't be unbiased about it. But this isn't the right chart. XRP. Bitstamp. I don't know. Maybe Bitfinex. What's the price history on XRP on Bitstamp? All right, let's go to the weekly. Zoom out, zoom out, zoom out. Okay. Look at this shit, man. You had this long flag. Look at this consolidation. But now that we're breaking out of it, it's going to send. And I hate this coin. I do. But I had to buy some because I had to buy some once it reversed and started going up. last week because we're gonna see 20x on this coin from here. I bought lower, obviously. I bought last week. So if you look at this, this is this week's green candle. This is last week's green candle. So if you bought last week, you could have bought as low as 40 cents. I didn't get 40 cents, but I got a little over 50 cents. And from 50 cents, I'm gonna see 30x probably. $15. Very likely, I would say. But let's let's say I took it at $10. That's still a 20x. That's a great return. Now, don't put all your money in XRP. Just put what you're willing to lose. Maybe a couple $100, maybe a couple $1,000, whatever your appetite is. This isn't going to happen overnight. I mean, granted, it probably is going to pump overnight. It's probably going to pump a lot, but we're talking about a 20x. It's not going to happen in a week. So don't put in money that you can't lock up for several months or 12 months. But I mean, obviously with cap gains tax, you want to hold for 12 months. We'll see if that becomes realistic or not. But this is one that I'm definitely calling to the moon. ETH to the moon. Solana, 100% is going to the moon. Let's just take a look at that chart quickly. What will be the best one for Solana? We'll just grab Solana on Bitfinex. Yeah, I mean, to the moon, no question about it. That shit's going to the moon. This is an XRP chart, so I'll put it back on there. But yeah, to the moon, to the moon. And then this is my other sleeper play that it's already gone up a lot, obviously, but yeah, this shit's going to the moon as well. This is an AI coin. This one could outperform Ripple, could outperform Solana. This one, if it does what NVIDIA did, you never know. They recently combined forces with two other shitcoins, AGI and Ocean Protocol, and this looks good to me. This chart looks real good to me. It looks like it's going to do in NVIDIA. So, not financial advice. This is information purposes only. You need to learn about the crypto market. Hope that you learned something. Leave a comment. Do me a favor, please subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to get to 1,000 very badly. And I guess I'll see you in the next one.